Hi, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to this event. And thank you so much for making the time to join us to discuss emerging trends in integrating global payroll platforms. Um, it is my pleasure to welcome on stage Todd Asevedo. Todd has been in the global HR and payroll business since 1992 and is HPHR and CPP certified. Whether it is retail in the US or manufacturing in Japan, he has helped several global companies simplify and consolidate and grow their businesses. He is the Global Vice President for SAP SuccessFactors Global Payroll and Time Center of Excellence. It is a delight having you on stage with us, Tom. Todd. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thanks, Guhan.
And I'm sure quite a few of you might have met Todd during SuccessFactors events, but I'm not sure how many of you know that he was a captain on the jump cruise ride at Disneyland before he got into the payroll and HR space in 1992. Of course, he's been captaining slightly different jungle rides since then. Pleasure to have you on board, Todd, and
Thanks.
thank you for joining us. Um, Joining us next is Christa Manning. Christa, hi, pleasure to see you. Christa has led human capital management technology and services research for a number of leading firms, including Aberdeen, AMR, now Gartner, Burson by Deloitte, and as an independent analyst before joining Ultimate. She is the director of technology and innovation at Ultimate Kronos Group and leads the AI vision, strategy, and Xander AI services portfolio management for the enterprise solution division. Christa, thank you so much for making the time. Pleasure to have you on stage with us.
Thank you.
I'm sure Christa is familiar to a lot of you from the analyst community and have seen her at several events. But did you know that she paid her way through university by delivering mail in the summer and was very proud to work for the largest employer of military veterans in the United States? She would like to honor all those who serve their countries during their Remembrance Week. Christa, that is a very noble thought. I'm sure quite a few of our colleagues have friends, family, or themselves have been in the services, so I'm sure they know what you're talking about. So thank you so much for joining us today. On stage next, we have Felicia Cheek. She's been working in the payroll environment for more than 25 years and has passionately enjoyed being an advocate for payroll professionals around the world. Felicia is widely recognized across the payroll industry and has been in the Hall of Fame in APA since 2009. Wow, a true blue Hall of Famer. Pleasure to have you on board with us, Felicia. She has recently joined Oracle, where she's responsible for their Oracle Cloud Payroll strategy. Thank you so much for joining us today, Felicia. It is a pleasure to have you.
Great, thank you.
And when we asked Felicia, she said, I think it's all about the payroll, and she passionately believes what she does in payroll. So it is a pleasure to have you, Todd, Christa, and Felicia on stage for this conversation. Thank you so much for making the time. And admittedly, these are very different times, right? Very different circumstances. We would have usually done this in an event on stage where we would have met you. Of course, nowadays, I think it's not nice to shake hands, but in the world that was the last 6-8 months, I want to start by asking Christa, how have you seen the payroll market evolve or change in response to all of this, right? In the last 6 to 8 months, it's been crazy for everybody. How do you see the payroll market evolving?
Sure, I think the whole environment has actually accelerated a number of trends that were underway. And the first one certainly is the idea of flexibility. So more access to real-time pay, on-demand pay, really trying to meet the workers where they really need the money, right? And I had the opportunity to do some research early on in the pandemic, or really what was the impact in terms of the HR technology sphere. And I was really struck, I was moved by a story of a retail worker that actually used that type of capability to buy PPE in order to get back into the workplace because they were deemed an essential worker, or the retail establishment was still serving customers, right? So that flexibility, that idea that we can't be working on these 2-week or twice monthly type of schedules, really was accelerated during the pandemic. The second trend, I think, is even kind of extending this idea of flexibility even further. And I like to kind of group the trend under the concept of humanity, right? So really, how can we actually meet people and meet their needs in much more humane ways? So certainly the idea around pay equity. We know that different populations are being impacted differently by the pandemic. And so can we use aggregate information and analytics to really understand that impact? And then also to give people visibility into the impact themselves, so can we give them insights in terms of what is going to be the impact in terms of their taxes or overtime, or if they want to change their schedules and things like that. And we also, I think, saw an opportunity to really offer up support of our colleagues and peers through charitable donations through payroll, right? Can we actually start to let people do things with their money that are meaningful? And certainly the overall trend towards financial well-being was accelerated. Again, giving people nudges, understanding what the impacts was going to be to changes in their paycheck or how they worked. And then I would say finally, that kind of leads into this overarching idea of just more proactivity in payroll. And certainly the ability to use artificial intelligence and to give people insights and nudges. Look for patterns around where should the payroll administrators spend their time, because you don't want to have that crush on Thursdays, or when they have to go in and check and see what are the things that may be off. Give them visibility into what might need to be checked, what they might want to do about it based on past patterns of their behaviors. And then certainly look for anomalies, look for anything that's out of the ordinary where we can use big data and AI to kind of surface those things to be, again, much more proactive and do the things that are meaningful to get more strategic work done from the payroll administrator's perspective, but also what do the employees really want? Can we look into new innovations and features and functions that really meet them where they are and support them during these challenging times?
Very interesting, Christa, very interesting. Felicia, how do you see the changes?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Christa said, and I'll just expand a little bit. When we talk about accelerating trends, I know there are several things that we've been doing in payroll over the last few years, and organizations continue to, ponder, is this something we really want to do, like cloud payroll? And one of the things that we've seen is those organizations that were managing payroll in the cloud were able to really pivot a lot quicker. And so, that question is still there for some, but it's a lot easier to explain some of the benefits of that. The other thing I'll say, just kind of tagging on the pay equity and just different payment types. So as organizations become more savvy and we look at the things that we can be doing in payroll with the activities of the last 6 to 8 months, there's definitely a need for employees to be able to access their pay early. And, some of those new trends are definitely, people are looking at them from a different light. So that's all I'd add. I agree with everything Christa said.
It is, yeah, very interesting perspective, Felicia, in terms of employees accessing and thinking about their pay earlier. Let me come to you, Todd. How have you seen the change?
Yeah, I think Christa and Felicia hit it right on the head. I would only add one other perspective, and that is thinking more from the person who's tasked with the payroll from a company perspective. Who's the people who are producing payroll results. One of my peers has a very popular podcast, and he just posted a new session, and it's called Payroll in Your Pajamas, right? So how do we use mobile and take advantage of the new agility with software as a service, like Felicia was talking about too, as payroll professionals? How do we use kind of these new disruptions in the market, the ongoing trends that have been accelerated, to make the processing part of this more streamlined and more mobile? I think that's been something that from our research, we've seen a lot of focus on. That's all I'll add.
No, I learned a new thing today, payroll in your pajamas. I thought it was pretty much everything in your pajamas these days. A little
Unfortunately.
more, right? At least it sounds a little more. But exactly like you, Felicia, and Christa said, for organizations to make the change from how they're doing payroll today, right? to be able to move to the next level, or if they are looking to do a transformation. And all of you have led and supported several customers and organizations in their journey. If you had to think about a quick checklist, right? What would be the things that someone who's starting off on a journey like this should think about? Felicia, perhaps we'll start with you.
Sure. So I guess it's the one thing that I would say that every organization, and you think it's a given, but it's not, ownership of payroll. A lot of times we still see organizations where half of payroll is owned by HR and half is owned by finance. So that would be the first thing, just making that decision so you know where your support is coming from, and what you need to garner support across the entire organization. The next thing that I would look at would be sourcing. Really, and this is the puzzle, right? And your sourcing decision really enables you or determines what you're going to be able to do from a vendor perspective, from your resources perspective. So really sit down and figure out how you're going to source your payroll in every single country across the globe. So it may be different, but each organization needs to have their own strategy that's efficient and effective for that organization. The next thing that I'll say is really, what's the system of record? Do you have a different system of record for payroll? So as you're looking at integrating and transforming, those are decisions that you need to make, way ahead of actually going into executing. But truly from a payroll perspective, what is the system of record? And whenever possible, you want to have an HCM system that is capable of being the system of record for payroll as well. The other thing I would say is really, how are you going to manage the payroll? Is it going to be in a shared services environment? Is it going to be decentralized, local? What activities are going to be local versus regional versus global? Those are all things that you should think about. And then I'll end with, and we're always talking about this, and particularly if we just go back to what we've been through over the last 6 to 8 months, automating, streamlining, what processes can you automate, can you streamline, can you standardize? Those decisions, and again, looking at where we are, those organizations that have streamlined their processes where they don't have to have a lot of involvement and a lot of sign-offs, I'm sure had an easier time. And obviously, I mean, we don't have to say a lot about the impact of automation over the last 6 to 8 months. It's really shown. So those are some of the things that I would talk about, and I would want to make sure so that when you integrate and transform, you've got those major questions answered and those strategic decisions made, and then all you have to do is execute.
Oh, that is very interesting, Felicia. A lot of very important points to think about. Okay, Todd, how do you see a checklist?
Yeah, again, I would agree with everything that Felicia said. I'd also add a couple of things that we deal with every day in our engagement with our customers, global considerations, right? So our average customer in APJ, for instance, which I think there's a lot of attendees from APJ on this conference. We have between 4 and 8 countries just in their APJ operation. And how does a common payroll platform make the operation of payroll different? That internally delivered service delivery model. And then the other part of this is a potential disconnection between the payroll platform itself and the service delivery model that's delivering ancillary services around the side for payroll. So maybe non-strategic, but core processes. Since we don't have to throw everything over the fence to service bureaus anymore with the advent of software as a service payroll, it's really critical to be able to understand the difference between pairing together and the benefit to the company of pairing together that payroll platform and a service delivery model that meets your strategic goal.
Oh, that is brilliant, Todd. I mean, for organizations to start thinking about, it's not just software or a service, right? It's about how to combine them intelligently. Very nice. Christa, what would you think about as a checklist?
Yeah, so I think I love alliteration, and Felicia's checklist covered it all. Stakeholders, sourcing strategy, system of record, services, and the idea of shared services, and then streamlining and standardizing. So I think that's a fantastic checklist that anyone can remember. But I think looking out at the marketplace, we also have to make sure our stakeholders are aware of what is truly available in the marketplace. Like, is there really any one vendor that can deliver a single global experience? Not quite yet, right? And we have to balance innovation and making the main thing, right? Like, you have to know your risk around experimenting with things, because we still have to make sure people get paid, maybe even more faster than ever before. And so it's really kind of keeping all that in mind and making sure that things like procurement vendor rationalization doesn't disrupt anything that would impact any of those other key S kind of strategy areas that Felicia highlighted so far.
Wonderful. I think that between the three of you, I think you've put together a fantastic checklist for organizations to sort of think about when they start this journey. But the journey is really about the people who are going to be impacted by this, right? And at the center of all of this is the employee, right? So how do you see the employee being impacted by integrating payroll with a bunch of other services, or with the advent of using more technology or the transformation? Perhaps I'll start with you, Todd.
Yeah, thanks, Guhan. Well, I tell you what, the HR function gets a lot of focus when it comes to employee experience, right? There's a lot of touch points through an employee's life cycle that are critical to that. And really what we've done quite a bit of research with our acquisition of Qualtrics a couple of years ago, and embedding a lot of that employee experience management into our delivery. We've seen what always gets backed out to one thing. The most disconnecting, painful experience an employee can have is getting paid the wrong amount, or having a delay in their pay. And so I always get to win. But that's that with great power comes great responsibility, right? So backing into this payroll experience for an employee from the HR perspective, it really is about this modern API-based integration with your master data. So HR data, time data, benefits data, payroll data, coming together, whether it's a single system of record, to Felicia's last comment, or it's that API level of integration. It's critical to the accuracy of payroll. And so the first and foremost focus here is accuracy. And then we move into transparency. And Christa talked about it early on when she talked about the trends. When we're looking at needing things real time and transparent, so modeling. So what are these changes and how are they impacting my take-home pay, for instance? And I can distribute that pay uniquely with a flex pay type of arrangement, or taking a mid-period advance, if you will. We're even focused on like eliminating predatory lending practices, right? And having employees manage their own pay when they want to have it, and they can see what's available, and companies can make adjustments based on the relationship they want with their employee and the culture that they want to create. So that employee experience between where you hold your master data and how accurate the gross to net is, or just that final pay statement, pay slip, that's critical. We see modeling and the transparency of the payroll process and business decisions that affect that payroll process as critical as well. And then obviously this real-time component. I think Christa also talked about AI being involved to monitor patterns in your data. So we're moving from a batch world into a real-time world where the computer should be augmenting our payroll staffs. And we see that as probably the main things that impact employee experience from a payroll perspective.
Wow, I think that is really putting the employee front and center, right? Thank you, Todd. Christa, how do you see this experience for employees?
I think that employees really just want to get to what they need to get done or the question they want to get answered. And so you can integrate payroll and the information from payroll in lots of different places. You may want to have it accessible through service delivery kind of interface. You may want to have it in the core HR system. And I agree with Todd's point around APIs. You know, we want to be able to make sure we can integrate the data wherever it's most intuitive or accessible or insightful for the employee to consume. I like to joke though that API stands for almost providing integration, right? So, and the employees really don't care how it works or what's behind the curtain, so to speak, right? I think more and more everyone in the industry is realizing there'll never be one system of in HCM, let alone employee-facing system, right? So really, it's the back end commitment around the integration and the success of the integration. And jointly own the responsibility for customers to deliver the employee experience, you know, in the way that their employees are going to feel that you're making the best use of their time is something to keep in mind. And the front end, really, it should be wherever the workers are. And more, I think we'll start seeing that in the flow of work, right? Like you might be in a Slack and want to know how much PTO time you have left, or you know what your last paycheck's going to be because you're on the phone with their bank and they're asking you that question for a security reason, right? So again, I think it is as seamless and as simple as we want the employee experience to be. There's a lot of good work going on in the background that will make this always be sort of a complex commitment and responsibility of organizations to execute well, so the employees feel like they're getting super seamless and good experience, that it's valuing their time so they can go back to work or they can go back to their personal life and what's meaningful to them.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's important sometimes, I guess, when we're in the payroll business, we need to think about making payroll transparent, right? From an employee experience perspective, it just is something that should just happen, right?
I just wanted to add really quick. I agree 100% with what Todd and Christa just said. I also think one of the big opportunities that we have in payroll from an employee experience perspective, even from an HR perspective, is most employees are on mobile devices. So as much as we can make that experience between a mobile device and a desktop seamless, well, look exactly alike, that has a huge impact on the overall employee experience, as well as all of the other things we discussed.
That's very true, Felicia. I think with all of the changes in the last 6 to 8 months, we've probably seen more screens in the last 6 to 8 months than we have probably in a long time ago, right? So, but when the employee gets a lot of attention from a focus and an outcome perspective, but from an HR business partner perspective, or someone that is actually providing the payroll inputs, right, so to speak, from an HR perspective, Christa, I'll probably start with you. How do you see their life changing with this integration, right? I like the term almost providing integration, APIs.
You know, I think HR administrators, business partners, you know, the people that are responsible for payroll and supporting the employee, you know, they're workers too, right? So we do have to worry about their experience, and wherever we can make it seamless and more streamlined. I like to joke that we're all hourly workers. It just depends on whether you get paid overtime, right? And so again, if we can be using automation and technologies and making integrations reliable and consistent and jointly responsible for making sure that they stay up to date with all the innovations and all the updates that are going on with cloud computing, I think that our responsibility is to make sure that we're making the best use of the payroll administrator's time through a lot of this work, because that ultimately downstream delivers that good employee experience. The frontline employee, right? We're all workers.
Very interesting. True. I mean, absolutely. Felicia, what do you think?
I agree. I think as when we get it right from an administrator perspective, it's seamless that they may be using or entering data in different systems, but it should be a seamless experience. It should not be as apparent when we get it right. And that's really what we're focusing on. How do we make that experience seamless? Because we know that we are generally working with multiple systems, particularly in payroll.
Absolutely. I think when you have integrated systems, it makes a big difference from an HR business partner perspective as well, right? So, Todd, how do you see the HR business partner role changing with all of this?
Yeah, I can tell you, it's just in line with the other two panelists here. To me, there is no distinction between this experience and that experience. If we don't get the HRBP or the payroll processor, if we don't nail their experience, they cannot give good experience to the employees. Period. Full stop. No matter how much business continuity, backup systems, redundant people you have to back people up, there's just not that sustainable capability around having a human fill the gap between the HRBP and the employee. So we have to use the AI that's available to help that HRBP really deliver all of the accurate information. There's lots of information out there. We need to have that, make sure that that's accurate. The HRBP can't be spending all of his or her time trying to figure out, what's the accurate information. They should focus on delivering that employee the experience that the company wants and the company's paying for. So I think there's a very tight connection between those two user experiences. I think Felicia talked about the mobile experience and the big screen. We don't find that employees are using a big screen to interact with HR at all. We almost see it's 100% mobile. And when you look at payroll, it is 100% mobile. I mean, between the margin of error, it's 100% with our studies. So yeah, that's I think it's very closely related.
Fantastic. This was very, very helpful, Todd. I think that sort of nicely brought it all together, right? I mean, right from the trends that you see in payroll to helping organizations sort of mentally create a checklist of the things they need to do if they need to go to the next level, and put the employee experience, whether they are an employee or whether they are an HR business partner, front and center, I think is the entire objective and the direction of any trend that we will be seeing in global payroll. And as one of my customers told me, payroll is a bit like electricity. As long as it's working, people just take it for granted. When it doesn't, everybody and their cousin has an opinion on how to fix it. So it is just one of those things that you just flip a switch and you just want it to happen, right? There's so much happening behind the scenes, and thank you so much for sharing all of your insight and perspective on how we can think about it differently in terms of taking it to the next level. Thank you very much, Todd, Christa, Felicia, for being with us today and sharing your insights on the global trends in payroll integration. It is a delight, and we look forward to seeing you at the rest of Rise Above 2020. And for the audience, if you have any questions, there is a link to the speakers lounge right below where you see this stream, and you can click on that and you can join the link, and some of our speakers will be here with you to help answer any questions you have. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. We hope you enjoyed the session, and it was a pleasure.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Felicia.
Yeah, thank you, Christa. Bye, Felicia.
Bye now.